Okay, let's do this shit. I am perfectly aware that I am by myself at the moment, but I want to start talking because I only want to be here for like 15, 20 minutes. So let's do this. Okay. Hello everybody. Hello anyone that joins. Because I'm here by myself, which is cool because I don't care. All right. So last night they had the interview room on, and I recorded the whole thing, talked to text, and analyzed it. And I'm bullet pointing, figuring out what the main points were. A lot of people don't have time to watch 3 hours when an hour of it is let's talk about your dog and what you ate for lunch today and all that good shit. So, hello, everybody. Hello. All right. So let's get started. I know that we got Patriot Pride coming on. Shout out to Patriot Pride. Alex Criminal Network is going on in a little over an hour. I don't want to be in direct competition with them whatsoever, but this really interested me and I want to get it out there so that people can, I don't know, see what they think of it. I will do my best to keep an eye on the chat, but I'm only one human. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? I have my fan on. It's really hot. So if it's super staticky, just let me know and I will go shut that off. All right. I am going to share my. Hi, Christine. Glad to have you. All right. Let's do this. So we're going to first look at. All right. So the investigators believe that this is a high risk crime. And they repeatedly emphasized that abducting an 84-year-old woman from a residential neighborhood carried an enormous risk to the offender. Neighbors noticed unusual activity, especially late at night, and offenders normally try to minimize exposure. Another thing that they were talking about is that he probably lost control, or they lost control of the situation probably very early on. They were talking about motive. If it was a motive to kidnap her for money, they clearly failed. And they were just inconsistencies, and we'll get to it probably later. But there were inconsistencies in how kidnappers for ransom usually go about things versus how this was gone about. So here we have, they're taking the 84-year-old woman. Nothing was taken from her house, and they're going to public media to bring attention to the ransom note. Now, usually what happens in kidnappings is that they are taking the woman or taking the child, taking the person, and they're going to low key keep that information between them, the kidnapped victim, and the family. They're going to try and figure out some way very quickly before it even gets media attention, sometimes even before they know their loved one is gone, to say, hey, you follow steps A, B, and C. You follow what we're saying, or you're just not going to see your loved one anymore. And that's not what happened here, right? So we have all of the things going on at night. Then we have, she doesn't go to church. Church friends call Annie and Tommaso. Annie and Tommaso go over. I'll give them a little bit of credit here because if I was going to look for my grandma when she was still alive, I probably would have ran around her house for a while. Did she fall? Am I missing somewhere that she fell? Did she fall between a countertop and the fridge? I mean, I don't know how many places there were to look. It looks like a decently sized house. I don't know if it's 50 some minutes worth, but I'll give them a little bit of credit. But so anyways, they call the police. Police get there and, the shit show goes downhill from there. But then we have ransom notes going to TMZ and KVOA, and it's just not how a kidnapper is going to want to do that. They want to minimize their amount of exposure. So they probably lost control of the situation very quickly. They say, this is our demand. Well, clearly that didn't get met. Or they no longer have a victim that's alive, and asking for a proof of life for a victim that is no longer of this earth, then, they lost control of it. And there's also the theory that maybe it didn't go as planned. They had discussed that as well. And I think it more so has to do with maybe she did pass, but bear with me, and everyone can have their own opinions. This is a safe spot. You guys can absolutely say and think what you want, within reason, respectfully, because I do welcome opinions other than mine. But I'm of the opinion that she was alive when she left the house. And that is because we know that her pacemaker disconnected from the Bluetooth. We don't know, we haven't heard anything about a cardiac event happening in the house before she left. So to me, if something were to happen in the house and she were to unfortunately pass away before they even get her out, we would have we would have known that. The family would not have been reacting as if this were a kidnapping scenario. I mean, yeah, as if it were a kidnapping scenario. So I'm of the belief that she was still alive when she left the house because all the pacemaker did was disconnect from the Bluetooth. So I'm rolling with that. Yeah, so if the intent was kidnapping for ransom or financial gain, it likely failed within the first few days. And then we have the timeline of her movement. So they discussed heavily the final verified timeline. She took an Uber to Annie and Tommaso's house at 5:32 p.m., dropped it back at her house at 9:48 p.m. by her son-in-law. Rhoda, I'm not sure if it did have, I would believe that it would have a spike, but I have not heard that there was any sort of cardiac death, any sort of abnormal rhythm that would have indicated that, like asystole. I haven't heard that, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. Again, things we don't know, but I am of the impression that it just disconnected. What that means, maybe they're using vague language to say that she did flatline while she was at the house, but I'm not sure. So she was dropped back at her house around 9:48 by her son-in-law. The garage door activity was recorded shortly after, and this was the last proof of life, right? So 9:48, I think garage door opens at 9:46, 2 minutes, garage door closes. And then they're talking about the anomaly. So uncertainty over who opened and closed the garage, right? We do not have confirmation that it was some sort of app that was used. We don't know if it was some sort of smart garage door button. We're not really sure how that information came. It has been told, but it's unverified of where that came from. Then conflicting reports about when the pacemaker disconnected, but we do know it disconnected at some point. And to me, the only thing that having that would show is that when they had the interaction with her, because I would assume that the first interaction she has with them is going to cause a spike in the heart rate, like you were talking about, Rhoda. So we're not really sure, but to me, that would be the only thing that would really tell me is what time it disconnects and then what time that spike happened. That just shows her interaction when they first came in. And then the reports of the door being propped the next morning, Savannah had confirmed that. I think that we did know that. I think Brian Enton might have reported on that. And that blood confirmed to be Nancy's was found on the front porch. Again, we've all seen the pictures of that. To me, in my opinion, I don't think it's a lot of blood. I worked in ER for quite a long time on third shift in the inner city of Milwaukee. I am sorry there's a police car driving by. Okay. So I worked in ER. I've seen a lot of blood. To me, that is, she was on blood thinners. And when elderly people are on blood thinners, their blood is very thin and they bleed very easily. We've all seen the photo of her bruised arm. Unfortunately, that does come with the territory if you do or are on blood thinners. But I don't think the blood on the front porch was a significant amount to rule, homicide as a factor. But again, I'm not there. I don't see how big the pools are. And to me, they were more like drops. Anyways, I'll get off of that, but we all kind of have seen the pictures. And what they were talking about is that the gaps create major uncertainty and fuel speculation. We can all agree what we know is not a heck of a lot when it comes to these true crime cases. So it is going to fuel speculation, but I don't want to do that here. I don't really want to do it tonight. I think you have other places that we can go and sift through this information and discuss our conspiracy theories and things like that. But, we have to speculate if we don't have all the information. Today, I'm just going to kind of rely on what they talked about and what we know are the actual facts. I agree, I'm on blood thinners and I get a scratch. You would think I cut my arm off. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that does happen, unfortunately. Okay, and then we have that media attention may have changed the offender's behavior. Says one of the strongest themes was that the public discussion and media coverage could affect the suspect in real time. They're suggesting that this person is still watching. They're watching the news. We're not sure how far that goes. We don't know if they're watching the YouTubers. They don't know. But to me, I see the benefit on both sides, right? I'm sitting here doing this. I wouldn't do it if I did not believe in, investigating these cases and keeping them in the light. But we have a lot of conspiracy theories and I don't want to, a lot of theories. I was just going to say theories because they're not conspiracy theories. They're people's beliefs and opinions. So we have different theories that discuss things that may have happened to her. Does that tailor what the suspect may or may not do? If a YouTuber goes on and says, I'm going to go check this specific area, then here we have potentially the criminal, the person that did this, the perpetrator or perpetrators, knowing the foreshadowing of events for the next hour, the next day. If they know or they hear an area where that person is going to go, they're going to make sure that they clean up whatever is in that area if it's there. So I think we can do better as a community to maybe discuss less of what we're doing in the forefront and not give them a heads up if in case they are watching, right? We don't want to give them a leg up on the competition here. We don't want to give them a chance to go and move her, go and move evidence, go and move gloves, go and move the backpack. There's a lot of different things if we're going off the theory that they disposed of evidence in different locations. So they're saying that media reports can potentially maneuver what behavior the perpetrator or perpetrators are committing right now. And that, like I said, public theories are influencing them. And if Nancy was still alive at some point, media pressure could have changed the suspect's actions. Again, I don't want to say one way or the other. I would hope that isn't the case because everyone that has been reporting, I have to believe, is doing it out of sincerity and caring for Nancy. So I'd hate to think that, but it does make room that it does hold some weight, right? That if she was alive at some point, if they're closing in on them, if the theory is correct, you don't want to let that person go and have that person talk if you think that you were going to be able to get away with it. It does hold some weight with me. And that commentators must be careful because speculation can unintentionally help offenders understand investigative direction. So when we have these profilers, when we have the agents that are on Brian Ensign and the interview room, we have all of these different, very, very professional, intelligent people that are speaking. And even they, I promise you, are omitting information because everything that is out there can be found not only by us, but by the perpetrator or perpetrators as well. So we need to be careful on how we're saying things, what we're reporting, and making sure that we're not overindulging in information that could potentially help them. If they find a scapegoat and the police are, looking in a certain direction, but they know that person, also has speculation, we're helping them in a way. So that's what we're talking about. And then the porch guy appears unsophisticated. Says a major portion focused on surveillance footage of a man on the porch. And the behavior analysis concluded he did not appear calm, organized, or mission focused. So mission focused, if your intent was to go and just kidnap someone, I don't think I'd be hanging out in the house for close to an hour or an hour and a half or 45 minutes or however long that person was in the house, right? You're going to want to get in there, get your target, and get out. So again, the question remains, what was being done during that time period? And I know that we've all gotten stuck on that January 11th theory. I did for a while, and now I've been like hearing about things recently. Google retracted what they had said about that originally being on the 11th of January. So what we could potentially have are two different perpetrators on the same day at different time periods. So we have a guy that comes up on the porch, gets the camera. We have a different one who maybe came earlier or came later, depending. But there is a chance that it is two different people on the same day on February 1st. So just keep that in mind. Seemed uncertain and reactive rather than strategic. Did not immediately disable the camera efficiently. See, that is interesting to me, because if I was a perpetrator and I'm coming in to do a kidnapping or a homicide, I think I wouldn't care. I would just go up to the camera and smash it. Why are we delicately trying to take this camera off of the door? See, that to me also doesn't make sense. So why, I don't know, why the lackadaisical movements when it comes to taking down that camera, right? At least if you smash it and then worry about getting it off, you're not worried about it catching you. So maybe it's not so much about the camera catching the person, maybe it's about what else they may catch, or it was done intentionally. Why? I mean, I don't know. Maybe when he was walking up to the camera, maybe they were taking her behind him. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of things of like why he would just be kind of nonchalantly trying to grab that camera and go grab foliage to grab the camera off. That doesn't make sense. He seemed uncertain and reactive. He did not immediately disable the camera. His clothing and behavior suggested someone trying to appear normal rather than highly prepared. With the footage, and we don't know if it's night vision because we don't know what color it is, but to me, you know, we've seen the movies. These people are usually dressed like ninjas, right? They're all black. It's very sleek. It's very form-fitting. It's not a huge backpack. It's not, you know, a coat and 12 layers. So not entirely sure the outfit choice. And to me, that makes it seem not as well planned out, I think, as we're perhaps giving this person credit for. He may not have committed crimes before, or he may have committed crimes before, but not at this level of sophistication. So they're giving him a bone here. They're giving him an ounce of credit and thinking he may have some intelligence with this, but maybe not to this magnitude, right? Maybe there were things that he wasn't prepared for, especially if we don't think that that January 11th footage is real. That would not give him that preparation time beforehand, right? So let's see. May have helped because he may have had help because inexperienced offenders often do not act alone. So because of this being unplanned and I don't know, kind of lackadaisical, I mean, I think if there was further planning, the first thing that he would have done is grab that camera off of there. If he knew the camera was there, which also shows that he was familiar with the environment, you would think that would be the first thing that he would take off. Why would you take it off later? See, that doesn't make sense to me either. So possibility, I can talk tonight, possibility of multiple people involved. They discussed whether there was more than one offender that participated, and reasons they considered multiple offenders was that difficulty moving an elderly victim alone, the suspect's apparent lack of confidence, and possibly that one offender distracted while the other acted elsewhere. However, they did admit, again, that there's not enough evidence to confirm any of this. Discussion warned against allowing speculation to spiral into unsupported theories. That's why we're talking about what they, discussed yesterday. These are people that have been trained in FBI profiling. They know what they're talking about. They're not giving us all the information, I promise you that, but they're giving us enough information to go off of that we need to take heed and take notice of what these people are saying, because we already know they're not saying everything, but they're not going to point us in a direction that doesn't at least hold a little bit of weight. Otherwise, we're going to come back afterward and say, well, why the hell would you say that? I hope that's not the case, but all right. So victimology is critical. So victimology is understanding Nancy's life, her routines, her habits, her social circle, and they believe that solving the case depends on understanding who knew her routines, who had knowledge of the house, who may have discussed her circumstances with other people, and whether the offender was within her close social orbit. And one of the experts believes that the offender is likely within first 1 to 3 tiers of association. So you have like family, then you have close friends, and then you kind of have casual acquaintances. So I think he's leveling that is either family, a friend that was decently close, or a friend's kid who had been over, someone who was decently familiar but was not family. So it's like once removed. And then you have casual acquaintances, someone she's met, she's got familiar with. You have contractors, you have laborers, you have there was that one gentleman, and I'm not saying this gentleman, but there was a gentleman who was getting, I think, pack rats from the neighbor's house, and Miss Nancy let him cut through her yard because it was easier to get back there. So you have people who are doing, pool workers. You have day-to-day people who are doing their jobs who may have had some familiarity with her, with the home, especially if they're working in a capacity that they wouldn't be eyeballed with every move they're making, right? If I'm in the house and I'm replacing a countertop, I'm going to suspect that I probably have some eyes on me. Now, if I'm in the backyard cleaning the pool, is someone really looking over my shoulder to make sure I'm getting every speck of, dirt out of the bottom of the pool, every leaf? Probably not. So, I give credence to potentially a contractor, but maybe one that had more time to look around than someone maybe that had more eyeballs on them while they were working. All right. So again, may have discussed her circumstances openly with others, and I'm a pretty open book, maybe more than I should be. I should learn from this, but I'm a pretty open book. I can discuss my family, my son, my daughter, my husband, my aunt, my uncle, with whoever, but you never really think that information is going to backfire on you. So someone that she could have just had conversations with. I'm going to take a drink before I start coughing. And don't worry, it's just sparkling ice water with caffeine. It's not sponsored, but it's delicious. It's the only thing that I drink. All right. So either directly connected to her or connected through someone who knew her. Hi, Nathan. Oh, and Blue. Hey, Blue. All right. So, signs of possible staging. This has been discussed. I don't give it a lot of credence. I just don't. But they discussed the concept of staging. So manipulating the crime scene to make the crime appear different than it actually was. For example, making a homicide look like a burglary or a kidnapping. So if the main objective was to go in there and just take her or just to unalive her, then they would probably, pull out drawers and things like that, right? We've seen other cases in which, someone goes in to unalive somebody, and they're pulling out the drawers, and it's very easy for the police to see a staging, but there wasn't any attempt at that. So what does that tell us? I mean, if I'm not attempting to make it seem like something it wasn't, is it really just a straightforward kidnapping? Because to me, if I was going in and burglarizing, the gem theory, this is a huge one. So if I was going in to look for gems and I'm Joe Schmo criminal from off the street and I break in and there's no gems, hell, if I'm going through all of that work and leaving with no like money, no jewelry, I would be grabbing something. What am I going through all this work for? But if it was a burglary and say something did happen to Nancy in the house, they take far more of a risk of taking her with them. There could be sighting. They have to perhaps figure out something to do with her. They have to get rid of evidence. Like, they have so many different things to where it would have been far easier for them to just leave her where she was. So I don't know. It's a big question mark, just like all of this, right? Oh, hi, Nathan's wife. I love you. All right. So they didn't conclude that staging occurred, but we also heard something about the blood droplets. I mean, what kind of criminal is seriously like, I don't know. Do they have like an IV and like they're draining her blood into a bag so that they can go and put it on the porch? That's so much extra time, effort, and energy that they would be wasting for nothing, right? Because as of right now, all we know that it's her blood on the porch. It doesn't tell us anything. So I don't know why that would be staged, but it is a theory. All right. They don't think staging occurred is the main point of it. Went on too long about that. Okay. And again, that they probably do know far more than the public, right? We only know fragments of information. So our brains, biologically, psychologically, they want to connect dots where there are no dots to connect. They want to make sense of things because that is what our brain is supposed to do. So we will try to make square pegs fit round holes. It's just what we are wired as human beings to try and do. What I try to do is look at the space in between that, a devil's advocate, if you will, because when we leave so much room for speculation, we're not looking at the things that we do have. There's not a lot, but there's some. So why aren't we focused more on analyzing the things that we do have rather than trying to make theories that we have no supporting evidence for? All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox because I will go down a rabbit hole on that. Okay, so we only know fragments. They obviously possess more information that we have at this point and probably could have for the very foreseeable future. We have public contradictions and we have rumors. We have nanos that give 3 different answers to the same question. I mean, what a life though, right? Like, who could mess up that badly at their job and keep it? Again, I digress. All right. So they cautioned that leaked information is often incomplete. So this is a giant game of telephone that media can play sometimes, right? I tell my friend Sally that my mom called me at 9:42 p.m. Then Sally's gonna say, "Oh yeah, Justine's mom called her at 9:45 p.m." And then it just goes down the line. No one's gonna talk about what time my mom called me. It was the only thing I could think of. But we make generalities, right? Because no one's gonna remember 9:42. They're gonna say 9:45, 9:40, 9:30, and that's where the timeline can get misconstrued. So not to hang up on the minute to minute detail, but a generic, perhaps 1:45 to 2 o'clock ish, right? Just saying. And that they can distort timelines, and that early assumptions in investigations are frequently wrong. So here are their overall conclusions, and I will let y'all get on with your night. And I appreciate you all being here. Rabbit holes, right? So the crime likely did not go according to plan. So the strongest conclusion from the discussion is that the offender appears to have lost control quickly. Like I said, they want to talk to the family, they want the victim, and them. Those are the only three parties that these kidnapping, perpetrators want involved. The second that media starts getting involved, it gets very messy very quickly. They want to keep it quiet. So the fact that they went to TMZ, they went to KVOA, really makes me think it is potentially for more notoriety than money. Because, not only does Savannah have money, but think of all of her friends that are in that circle that could have easily paid the Bitcoin. So I think, and I've always thought this, the family knows. They either know what happened to her, they know who took her, or they know where she is. I'm hoping that they know where she is and she's safe and they got her relatively quickly. But part of me believes that they know, and because it's going to be perhaps such a big deal, that they don't want to let us know yet. That's just my theory. So anyways, again, digress. Mistakes inconsistent with a highly sophisticated criminal. The offender probably knew Nancy or her environment. The behavioral experts strongly lean toward the idea that the suspect had familiarity with Nancy, the neighborhood, or someone close to her, and it was likely not a completely random offender. The porch individual is viewed as a weak link. So the experts repeatedly implied that the man captured on the camera may eventually become key to solving the case if he's still with us. But again, that theory is speculation that he may no longer be of this earth, or she or they may no longer be of this earth. His behavior suggests anxiety, uncertainty, and a lack of professionalism. These are the two criminal FBI profilers that were on yesterday. Now, I have heard other criminal profilers, FBI profilers, say that he appeared pretty calm, pretty cool, pretty collected. And he may be vulnerable to pressure or interrogation. Speculation has outpaced confirmed evidence, and don't we know that's true? So there are a few major takeaways to these public theories. A lot of them, all of them, because we don't know everything, they're all based on incomplete information. It may seem to come full circle, but because we don't have all the information, that circle does not connect right now. We have a gap. We don't know. And there's conflict in official statements, anyway, or they rely heavily on rumor. So we need to separate what is confirmed evidence, what is behavioral interpretation, and what is public speculation. I hope that I've done a good job differentiating between those. Investigators still likely believe the case is solvable. Despite the confusion and the lack of arrest, the experts express confidence that behavioral patterns, forensic evidence, victimology, and evolving information could eventually identify the offenders. They emphasize that many complex cases are solved slowly as relationships unravel, witnesses talk, and investigative pressure builds over time. So this is what we have, right? And I think the thing that interests me the most, I don't know if it's because my degree is in psychology or just because I like this, this aspect of, criminal behavior, but this science is so very interesting to me. There is a famous FBI profiler, Candace DeLong. She's been on Dr. Phil. She has her own podcast, Killer Psyche. If she ever sees this, I'm going to fangirl faint. But she is phenomenal at going behind. She has talked to Ted Bundy. I don't think she talked to Jeffrey Dahmer, but she has talked to some of the most prolific serial killers. So I would love her to take a look at this and have given her opinion. And I'm surprised that she hasn't, but she's phenomenal at it. And I like listening to it because what we need to think about too is they're talking about behavior, right? Like, what does the behavior show? What do these actions tell us? What do they not tell us? But I like to look into psychology and what sort of comorbid disorders, what sort of, psychological issues would a person need to have to commit a kidnapping, to commit a homicide, to commit these types of crimes? Because there are perfectly healthy, sane people walking amongst us every day that suffer from anxiety, depression. That's not what we're talking about. We have to be talking about things like antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. These are people that have issues with authority. And there are usually many overlapping characteristics and, upbringings, nature versus nurture, how people are raised, behaviors they would have exhibited when they were young that could potentially, point them to somebody that sounds familiar. I'm not saying this because I do want to do another show on this, but say this person, to be able to do this would have suffered from a disorder in which, like serial killers like to unalive small animals when he was younger, right? I want to look into those things because to me, if I were to hear this about, my sister or my brother or something, I would know that that person was capable of doing those things. That's something extra I could look at to start connecting those dots that haven't been connected yet for someone that could perhaps identify this person. What behavior goes behind a person that is capable of a crime like this? So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry it was a little longer than intended. But if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, please smoosh the like button for me. I would really appreciate it. And let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything. Thanks, Blue. Have I heard of Leah from John Kelly profile? I have not. I'll have to look into that. Police arrest, then build a case. FBI builds a case, then arrest. I really think they know who it is and waiting for them to make their move. Yeah, I 100% agree. So I think going forward, I'll pop in and do little live episodes like this if there is something that, I feel should be discussed. Like I said, I really wanted to kind of wrap this up in a pretty little nutshell because, highly intelligent people like to use a lot of big words to not say a lot sometimes. And sometimes it can be difficult for me to interpret or to really take away what those big conclusions are. So if I can figure it out, what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll throw it in the notes section. So if you guys want to take a look at it, I'm totally fine with that. And I cannot believe that I've only been talking for like 35 minutes and I feel like I'm already going to lose my voice. So I'm going to wrap it here. Thank you guys so much for being here. There is a lot of great people to go check out. Patriot Pride, I think, is on right now. Like I said, Alex from Criminal Network is coming on in 40 minutes. So if I don't see you later, I will be around those chat rooms and I'm going to go rest my voice. But hi, Nathan. What's Nathan? Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you, Rhoda. Thank you, Doug. Did I miss any? I want to just make sure I didn't miss saying hi to anybody because I'm that Midwest. Oh, thank you, Blue. About my little dude. Yeah, I have a teenager. I don't know what that is. I have a great moon. Oh, have a great night. We're like, okay. All right, thanks, guys. Love you. See you later.